Trouble for country music star Morgan Wallen. He's accused of throwing a chair off of a rooftop bar in Nashville, narrowly missing police officers. Senior national correspondent Steve Osunsami has the story. Good morning.
Despite the smooth voices and polished boots, some country music artists carried secrets that clashed with the values they claimed to hold. Their actions were not just poor choices, they were also reckless. Some were so troubling that even loyal fans turned away in disgust. These were not minor stumbles. They were profound betrayals of the image they built. As we take a closer look at this darker side of country music, the truth becomes hard to ignore. Join us as we unveil 21 biggest scumbags in old country music history. Number 21. Spade Coolie. Spade Coolie once stood among the most successful names in early country music. He called himself the king of Western swing and filled dance halls with his band during the 1950s. He was known for hits like Shame on You, starred in Western films, and hosted a television show that pulled in large crowds each week. At the height of his fame, no one doubted his place in American music. However, a lot changed in April of 1961. After filing for divorce from his second wife, Ella Mae, Coolie attempted to reconcile with her. But his jealousy and substance use, as noted in Shame, Shame, a saga of Spade Coolie, spiraled out of control. He accused her of cheating, and on April 3, he beat her to death inside their home. Their young daughter, Melody, saw everything. Coolie even pressed a lit cigarette to Ella Mae's skin after the beating to be sure she was dead. Melody testified against her father in a trial that caught national attention. On August 19th, he was found guilty. Just 3 days later, he received a life sentence. Still, Coolie served only 8 years. The state of California granted him parole in early 1970, and as part of a temporary release, he performed at a charity concert on November 23, 1969. He took the stage, earned a standing ovation, and spoke with joy about returning to music. However, that same night, he collapsed backstage and died from a heart attack. It was a strange end to a once bright career. Though he once led one of the most popular bands in the country, Spade Coolie's name has mostly disappeared from public memory. The brutal act that ended his fame ensured that. Number 20. Johnny Paycheck. To many of his listeners, country singer Johnny Paycheck stood as the picture of the rowdy outlaw artist. He became known not only for his classic songs, but also for his run-ins with the law. Born Donald Eugene Lytle on May 31, 1938, in Greenfield, Ohio, he began by playing in backing bands for George Jones, Ray Price, Porter Wagner, and Faren Young. He also proved his talent as a songwriter, writing Tammy Wynette's first hit, Apartment Number 9, released in 1966. In the 1950s, he was court-martialed and served 2 years in military prison after assaulting a naval officer. Decades later, in 1981, Paycheck was arrested in Wyoming for charges involving a 12-year-old girl. His band members informed the police that such accusations followed him due to his fame. He was released on bond and the next year entered a no-contest plea to avoid trial and continued touring. The witnesses in the case hesitated to testify. The charge was reduced to a misdemeanor, and he paid a $1,000 fine. A $3 million civil suit followed, but the case never reached a courtroom. Adding to his list of legal cases, in December of 1985, Paycheck was found guilty and sentenced to 7 years in prison after shooting a man at the North High Lounge in Hillsboro, Ohio. He used a .22 caliber pistol, and the bullet grazed the man's head. Paycheck said it was an act of self-defense. After spending several years fighting the sentence, he began his prison term in 1989. He served 22 months before being granted a pardon by Ohio Governor Richard Celeste. Number 19. George Jones. The country singer from Texas found his way to fame during the 1960s and never turned back. George Jones, often called the Possum, became known not only for his voice, but for the long, rocky path that brought him to it. He grew up in Beaumont, where he played his guitar for tips on street corners. After serving in the United States Marine Corps, he decided to follow the path set by his hero, Hank Williams. His rise began in 1959, when White Lightnin' reached the top of the charts. It was his first #1 song and the beginning of a long career. His deep, emotional singing resonated with fans worldwide. People came not only for the music, but also to watch the drama that surrounded his personal life. He gained the nickname No-Show Jones for missing concerts, yet his fans still showed up, hoping he might take the stage. Through it all, he won 5 Grammy Awards, along with numerous honors from the Academy of Country Music, the Country Music Association, and Billboard. But there was another side to George Jones that caused pain. He struggled with drinking for most of his life, and that led to serious problems. He was abusive to his wives, including singer Tammy Wynette. He put others in danger by driving drunk and crashing into cars. He sometimes failed to support his children and avoided paying what he owed. For all his success as a singer, his behavior at home and behind the wheel casts a long shadow over his career. Many still admire the voice, but they cannot ignore what he did outside the studio. Number 18. David Allan Coe. In the early years of the 1980s, David Allan Coe put out 2 underground records that only reached a limited audience. The songs on those albums shocked even longtime listeners. The tracks were filled with racist language, hate toward women, and open insults toward homosexual people. Though the records were not released through major labels, they spread quietly among collectors. They built a reputation for being some of the most offensive music ever recorded by a known artist. David Allan Coe's name has always stirred trouble. He may be the hottest debated figure in the country music world. Even Spade Coolie, who was convicted of taking the life of his wife in front of their child, did not draw the same kind of media firestorm. With tattoos, prison scars, ties to motorcycle clubs, and a mean streak, Coe earned his outlaw label through both music and behavior. Songs about cheating, drinking, and raw heartbreak added to that image. But it was 2 records from the 1970s, Underground and Nothing Sacred, that pushed him into another kind of attention altogether. In one track on the later CD collection, X-Rated Hits, Coe sang about white women who date black men, saying it made him want to vomit. In another, he used a line that said, "Black people never die, they just smell that way." These lyrics went far beyond shock value. They were hateful. Number 17. Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty is among the most successful names in the history of country music. Over his career, he recorded 40 songs that reached the top spot on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. Only George Strait ever managed to pass that number. He earned the nickname High Priest of Country Music from country comic Jerry Clower, a title that reflected not just his solo achievements, but also his powerful run of duets with Loretta Lynn. Together, they released 10 full albums, scored 5 #1 singles, and added a total of 12 songs to the top 10 list. In his prime, Conway Twitty was often seen as country music's answer to Elvis Presley. That comparison made sense due to his success and his background. He began his career in rock and roll and rockabilly, even writing songs for Elvis himself. His hairstyle, pompadour, and sideburns only deepened the link. This gave his music broad appeal, but some country traditionalists always saw him as an outsider. Even with all his hits, Conway's only wins at the Country Music Association Awards came from his duets with Loretta. Behind the scenes, however, things were not so smooth. Conway Twitty faced numerous legal issues stemming from unpaid debts and poor financial decisions. One major issue arose from his theme park, Twitty City, where funds allocated for development and operations were reportedly misused. These troubles cost investors and partners. Financial messes, poor oversight, and broken promises made business dealings with him a risky move, and those decisions cast a long shadow over what was otherwise a record-setting career. Number 16. Morgan Wallen. Morgan Wallen found himself in the middle of several scandals and legal issues since he entered the country music world around 2016, but none of them reached as wide an audience as what happened in February 2021, when a neighbor's camera caught him outside, clearly drunk, yelling a racist slur.
The message that is being sent right now is that the N-word is a no-go. I think that has been made clear.
The video showed Wallen shouting across a driveway, saying goodbye to a car full of friends after what appeared to be a long night. When the footage became public, Wallen released an apology. He said he was embarrassed and apologized, adding that there was no excuse for using that kind of language. He promised to change his behavior and make better choices. The fallout was quick. Country radio dropped him, award shows distanced themselves, industry insiders criticized him openly. However, at the same time, his fans continued to buy his music. His album, Dangerous, had come out just a few weeks earlier, and it went on to sit at the top of the Billboard 200 chart for 10 weeks. In the end, it was named the most popular album of any genre in the United States for the year 2021. This year, he caused another controversy when he walked off the Saturday Night Live stage without stopping for the usual handshakes and hugs. The moment stood out, especially since the show usually ends with performers and cast members gathering together in a friendly way. Instead of joining the rest of the group for the send-off, Wallen turned and left the stage on his own. The action drew immediate attention as people questioned whether it was a planned exit or something more personal. Number 15. Jimmy Allen. The country world shook when Jimmy Allen, one of its rising stars, was accused of unwanted sexual intimacy and harassment by a former member of his team. She said the abuse took place between the year 2020 and the year 2022. Soon after, another woman came forward with her accusations against him. Allen's country music career collapsed after the accusations became public. Around the same time, he and his wife announced they were separating. They also shared that they were expecting another child. At that point, they already had 2 daughters. The story took another unexpected turn the next year. Allen revealed he had quietly welcomed twins with another woman during his divorce. Number 14. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis became known not only for his role in shaping early rock and roll and country music, but also for his troubled marriage history. 2 of his wives died under strange circumstances, raising questions that never fully went away. One of the most disturbing moments in his personal life came when he married his 3rd wife, Myra Gale Brown. She was his first cousin once removed and only 13 years old. Lewis was 22. He often tried to downplay the age gap by telling reporters she was 15, but the truth caused public anger. When he traveled to Britain for a tour, the backlash was very instant. The tour was canceled after just 3 shows. When he returned to the United States, he found that he had been blacklisted there as well. His music career took a major hit. How about a husband swap in country music? It may sound unusual, but here's how it happened. Number 13. Shaniah Twain. Shaniah Twain and her husband Mutt Lange worked closely on music and shared a personal life. He produced her album Come On Over and co-wrote every song. Their marriage seemed strong, which made it even more shocking when they separated in the year 2008. Twain had discovered that Lange was having an affair with her friend, Marie Anne Thiebaud. By the year 2010, the divorce was final. Lange and Marie Anne became a couple. The story took another unexpected turn when Twain later married Marie Anne's former husband, Frédéric Thiebaud, in the year 2011. The situation became known as a husband swap. Number 12. William Orville. William Orville, Lefty Frizzell, was the son of an oil field worker. He introduced a smooth, stretched-out singing style that many younger artists later emulated. When he became famous in 1950, his voice stood out. Merle Haggard, George Jones, Roy Orbison, George Strait, Keith Whitley, and Randy Travis all spoke about how much they learned from him. He lived in Greenville, Texas during the Second World War. He sang on KPLT radio in nearby Paris. Around this time, he met Alice Harper. They got married in March 1945. In the year 1946, they moved to Roswell, New Mexico. There, he sang frequently on KGFL radio and played with the regular band at the Cactus Gardens Dance Hall. In July of the year 1947, things went south. Frizzell was charged with statutory intimacy violation. The next month, he was convicted and sent to jail for 6 months. While locked up, he wrote many songs to his wife. One of them became well known. It was called I Love You 1,000 Ways. Number 11. Ernest Dale Tub. Ernest Dale Tub, known as the Texas Troubadour, was a country singer and songwriter who helped shape the honky-tonk sound. His song, Walking the Floor Over You, released in the year 1941, became a turning point in country music. It brought a new kind of sound that many others would follow. In the year 1948, he was the first artist to record a hit version of Blue Christmas, a song that later became more closely tied to Elvis Presley. Another popular song by Tub was Waltz Across Texas, written in the year 1965 by his nephew Billy Talmadge. That song became a favorite at dance halls across the state. Tub's music career had bright moments, but his personal life had trouble. In the year 1957, during the early morning, he walked into the National Life building in Nashville with a .357 Magnum. He meant to shoot music producer Jim Denny. Instead, he shot at Bill Williams, a news director who just happened to be arriving for work. Tub missed him twice before realizing he had aimed at the wrong man. Police arrested him and charged him with public drunkenness. Number 10. Faren Young. Faren Young was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and grew up on a dairy farm just outside the city. When he was a boy, he dreamed of becoming a classic pop singer. That changed the moment he heard Hank Williams on the Louisiana Hayride. From then on, country music became his goal. He later sang on the Louisiana Hayride himself and signed with Capitol Records. However, in 1952, he was drafted into the Army. While he was going through basic training, his song, "Goin' Steady," reached number 2 on the charts. After his time in the Army, he moved to Nashville full-time. It was there that he continued to rise in the country music scene. Around that time, Hank Williams, the man who first inspired him, married Faren's girlfriend, Billie Jean Jones. Faren Young became known for his looks and was called the Hillbilly Heartthrob. He also picked up the name the Young Sheriff after appearing in a singing cowboy film. Through the late 1950s and the 1960s, he stayed near the top of the country music scene. He was also known for being difficult, for drinking excessively, and for holding strong opinions about who belonged in country music. Unfortunately, by the 1970s, his scumbag behavior started hurting his place in the music world. In the year 1972, he was accused of spanking a woman during a concert in Clarksburg, West Virginia. He said the woman had spat on him. He paid a $24 fine and moved on. He had been with Mercury Records since the early 60s, but when his records began to lose strength, the label dropped him in the year 1978. Number 9. Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette was best known for her song "Stand By Your Man" and a voice that often sounded close to breaking. Behind that sound, though, she had a strong will. Her life was filled with personal pain and setbacks, but she kept moving forward. On October 4, 1978, Tammy said she was kidnapped from the parking lot of the Kane Sloan department store in the Green Hills area of Nashville. She had gone shopping for a birthday gift for her daughter, Tamala Georgette Jones, who was turning 8. Tammy told police that she had left her car unlocked and that when she came back, a masked man was waiting inside. He had hidden in the back seat and attacked her. Police in Nashville investigated the incident but stated that it was very difficult to understand. Tammy had a broken cheekbone and dark bruises on her face, but the attacker had not taken anything from her. She had about $40 in cash and 30 credit cards on her. She was also not sexually harmed. Tammy said she never saw her attacker's face, which gave police very little to go on. In the year 2000, years after Tammy died, her daughter Jackie Daly said something else in her book, Tammy Wynette. A daughter recalls her mother's tragic life and death. Jackie wrote that the story about the kidnapping was not true. She believed it was made up to hide the fact that George Ritchie had beaten Tammy. Number 8. Buck Owens. From the 1950s to the 1980s, Buck Owens was known for songs like "Act Naturally" and his appearances on the television show Hee Haw. He appeared as a friendly, driven performer. However, behind the smiles, problems followed him throughout his time in the country music industry. These problems were tied more to business and personal dealings than the kind of shocking headlines that followed some of his peers. One of the most talked about disputes involved Merle Haggard and the song "Sing Me Back Home." Merle had written the music in the late 1960s while under Buck's wing. It became a significant hit in 1967. However, Merle later stated that he barely saw any money from it. The publishing company affiliated with Buck received most of the earnings. Some said this was part of a pattern. Buck, who had a firm grip on the business side of music, was said to have used his role to benefit himself at the cost of younger singers who trusted him. Another problem followed Buck during his tours with George Jones in the 1960s. People close to the shows said Buck arranged the order so that he always performed last, even when George was just as well known. Buck also chose songs and stage time in a way that made sure he stood out. Some said it was less about the music and more about staying on top of the spotlight. During interviews, Buck sometimes gave subtle digs at George, as if trying to keep the upper hand even off stage. There were also quiet claims from that same time that Buck pushed certain women in the industry into lovemaking. These stories were never part of any official report, but they were passed around behind the scenes. People said Buck had enough power in Nashville to get away with it. Though never made public in detail, those claims added to the uneasy talk that often followed his name. Number 7. Roy Akuff. Roy Akuff was called the King of Country Music. From the 1930s through the 1970s, he stood as one of the most well-known names in the genre. He was known for songs like "Wabash Cannonball" and for shaping what the Grand Ole Opry became. On stage, he carried himself as a clean-cut man who valued faith and tradition. But behind that image, some stories painted a rougher picture, especially when it came to his control over others in the business. At the Grand Ole Opry, where he became a regular in the 1930s and stayed for decades, Akuff gained more than fame. He gained power. Some said he used that power to block others from moving forward. Singers who disagreed with him or got on his bad side sometimes found themselves left out of Opry shows or lost chances they had once been promised. Behind the scenes, there were whispers that Akuff leaned on Opry managers to keep certain artists off the stage. He had a fiery temper. He was quick to argue, and the people around him, bandmates, tour staff, and fellow performers, often found themselves caught in his outbursts. He was said to have clashed with Hank Williams over how songs should be sung and how the Opry should be run. Akuff held strong to the way he thought country music should sound, and anyone who tried to change that faced his anger. Even when off stage, he kept a firm grip on how things were done, which often led to tension between him and others in the business. Number 6, Johnny Horton. Johnny Horton was known in the 1950s and early 1960s for songs like The Battle of New Orleans. His voice was strong, and his songs mixed country with stories from the past. But despite his music, there were things people talked about that stirred questions, especially after he died in 1960. Before he died in a car wreck, Horton told family and friends he believed a drunk driver would kill him. He spoke of it more than once. The crash happened just outside Milano, Texas, when an intoxicated man hit Horton's car head-on. Horton was 35 years old. After the wreck, many looked back at what he had said and called it a strange and haunting warning, but not everyone believed it. Some said Horton had played up those warnings on purpose. They thought he wanted to create a particular image for himself, one that would endure after he was gone. There were also small claims about the way Horton built his public image. He leaned into the honky-tonk style in his songs, and on stage, but off stage, he came across much more clean-cut. That difference led some to question the authenticity of his stories and style. Nothing he did was illegal, but these stories followed him after his death, leaving people wondering just how much of his legend he had shaped with his own hands. Number 5, Webb Pierce. Webb Pierce rose to fame in the 1950s and 60s with songs like There Stands the Glass. He helped shape the honky-tonk sound and became one of the top country stars of his time. But behind the success were troubles that made people talk. One of the biggest complaints came from the musicians who worked for him. Several claimed they were paid little despite Pierce's apparent wealth. He owned flashy, gold-plated cars and built a guitar-shaped swimming pool at his home. Some said he cared more about money than about fairness, and those who played behind him felt that they were being taken advantage of. Pierce was also known for pushing around newer singers. He used his fame to get better spots on shows and better pay. Some artists said he went out of his way to block them from growing, especially if he saw them as a threat. That made him disliked by many people in Nashville, where others thought he came across as overly confident. He drank heavily, and that often led to trouble. People remembered scenes in bars where he got into loud fights. None of those moments ended in court, but they added to his rough image. Pierce never faced the kind of legal trouble that befell some of his peers, but the talk around him suggested that his path to the top had not been entirely clean. Number 4, Whan Jennings. Whan Jennings became one of the most well-known names in country music during the 1970s. He stood apart from others with his loud style, deep voice, and open dislike for the way Nashville was run. He often spoke out against the rules of the music industry, which caused tension with producers and other stars who adhered to those rules. His stand won him loyal fans, but it also kept him at odds with those in power. In 1977, Jennings was arrested for cocaine possession with intent to sell. The arrest made national news and nearly ended his career. The case was later dropped due to a mistake in the legal process, but the damage had already been done. He had long struggled with substance use, and by that time, his addiction had taken control. He missed shows, fought with his band, and lost touch with his children during those years. People close to him said he changed when the substances took over. His band, the Wailers, often felt left behind. Even as Jennings grew richer and more famous, some said he paid them little and kept most of the earnings for himself. That caused anger within the group, but few spoke out while he remained in charge. Number 3, Jimmy Wakeley. Jimmy Wakeley, who gained fame in the 1940s and 50s as a singing cowboy and country performer, drew criticism behind the scenes for how he handled money. He was accused of keeping more than his share from film projects and not paying others fairly, especially those who worked with him on Western movies. Some of his business partners claimed he took advantage of them, which led to tension and broken ties. Though no court case followed, these claims painted a very different picture from the kind-hearted man he portrayed on screen. Within the music and film world, his name began to carry a sense of distrust. While fans still saw him as the clean cowboy they knew from theaters and records, people who worked beside him told a more complex story. There were also whispers that he made his cowboy image seem more real than it was. Some said he added details to his past to make it sound more like the heroes he portrayed. These stories did not reach most of the public, but they raised questions about which parts of his career were genuine and which had been shaped to sell. Number 2, Porter Wagner. Porter rose to fame from the 1950s through the 1970s and became a well-known figure at the Grand Ole Opry. However, he faced severe criticism for how he handled professional relationships. The most talked about issue was his treatment of Dolly Parton, who started under his wing as his duet partner. Dolly later said he tried to control her choices, took too much credit for her rising success, and then sued her after she left their working relationship in 1974. Her own words painted a picture of a man who cared more about control than support, which hurt the way some people saw his role as a mentor. Beyond his feud with Dolly, he also faced complaints from musicians who worked for him. Some said he let people go without warning and expected complete loyalty, which caused bitterness among former band members. His bright, sparkly outfits and bold stage image also rubbed some of the older, more conservative performers the wrong way, including Roy Akuff. These issues, brought to light in Dolly's writing and other sources, raised questions about the way he dealt with others, even though many still praised the music he left behind. Number 1. Jim Reeves. Among others, Jim Reeves is the one most people did not expect to see in this list. He became popular during the 1950s and 1960s for his smooth voice and polished style, but faced quiet yet lasting questions about his private and professional life. While his public image was clean and respectful, people in Nashville circles often whispered about his private affairs. He was accused of having relationships outside his marriage, which strained his home life and gave rise to steady talk behind the scenes. These stories remained without clear proof, but stayed alive in local gossip. There were also quiet claims that he used his fame to pressure young women in the business. No one ever made a formal complaint, but some believed he took advantage of his status when working with female performers. In the studio, Reeves sometimes argued with producers when he did not get complete control of the sound he wanted. Some saw this as confidence, but others called it pride. After he died in a plane crash in the year 1964, these stories began to surface more often. While they did not erase his success, they left a shadow on the gentlemanly image he had worked hard to build. Which of these scumbag attitudes surprised you the most? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.